But it's just such good content that we're getting right now.
Yeah.
So we should record it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. The reason.
Yeah. So Danny just asked me, or Jordan, Danny. God, I'm getting you mixed up.
Bald.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm getting you mixed up with Peter's group. George just asked me, he said, why'd you write this book? And, I just said, my answer is pretty straightforward. I mean, I just didn't feel like anybody was really focusing, and people are in the Bitcoin world, but I didn't feel like anybody more in the mainstream world was really focusing on what's wrong with, the systems that we were all living in and why everybody's experiencing so much economic pain these days. And, people are coming at it from different angles, but in the U.S., there was a lot of red team, blue team stuff. And, they had a presidential debate, and deficits and the money issue would never even mentioned or discussed or any of that stuff, just kind of ignored it. And I just was like, gosh, this is the fundamental problem. And I just, somebody's got to step up and say it. Somebody's got to say it loud, say it clear, say it definitively. And then once I started thinking that, then I thought, well, some people have said it and done a pretty good job of it. In fact, a great job of it. Seyfedin's book's fantastic. Lynn's book's fantastic. Jeff's book's fantastic. But I thought, well, those are good. And what I'll do is I'm going to borrow from them, but I'm also going to try and say it in a way, as we talked about pre-show, it's got more of a personal story in it that makes it more engaging, that makes it more likely to be read by a normie, because your average normie doesn't really read a textbook. And I've given out the Bitcoin Standard, and my smart friends read it. A lot of people get started and they bog down. So I'm trying to, you could bog down in this book too. There's I get very technical about how we got here. And, there's some chapters I even say in the beginning, hey, you could skip these chapters and not miss the whole message. But, I'm trying to, the goal here, my personal goal is to orange pill the world. Kind of like Max, and which is why Max was so generous to write it forward to it, and he's gave it a good review. I mean, I think that Bitcoin is going to change our world in a very positive way. And so, I want to, Bitcoin's done a lot for me. I bought a lot early. I've done well with it. And I want to give back to the Bitcoin community, and this is kind of my contribution. So, it hasn't been simple. For 6 months now, I've been, nothing but heads down, and it's generated a lot of complaints from my wife, like, finish the goddamn book, so I can have you back. And, the good news is here we are on, the 31st of January, 2024 or 5, and the goddamn book is pretty much finished. I mean, I think we might send it to Amazon Saturday, Sunday, worst case Monday, and I think they need a little turnaround. So one might be able to purchase it. You can actually buy the Kindle version, pre-order the Kindle version now, but the hardcover and paperback edition, will probably be a point and click next week. And I imagine they have a week turnaround time for printing and delivery and so forth. But if people want to read it immediately, they can buy Kindle and they'll be able to get that delivered instantly. So there we are. That's kind of the background.
Yeah, I'll drop this episode when you release the book.
Okay.
We can do it before, but
I'd say do it before, but it's up to you. Whatever you want. I mean, it's coming out. I mean, we're talking days here, one way or the other, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Either way, what was so I've read I'm up to 60 pages in the book.
Yeah.
And I put something on Twitter, and I was like, it is different to other Bitcoin books, and this is what I loved about it, because it hooked me. I read 50 pages, and I said, I don't read books, I listen to books.
Yeah.
And somehow you caught me into this, and you'd hooked me in. And it is because you are telling it through you. And it's not just, as you said, like a textbook of, here we're just outlining the problem, and then here's the solution. It is like telling it through your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, people watch things on TV. They want stories, right? I mean, they want heroes' journeys. They want stories. They want human beings involved. They don't, and I'm a real human being, and, I've lived this story. I've been a sound money guy for years, and you mentioned the audiobook, just to answer people's questions. There will be an audiobook. Walker America's reading it for me. The process takes a little bit of time. A lot of people said you should read it. I can't. I'm still managing a couple of funds, and I've just got, doing an audiobook takes a lot of work to get it right. And so he'll be doing that. And my estimate is that, within 30 to 45 days, probably there'll be an audiobook available. And it'll be on Audible, it'll be on Kindle, or on Amazon. that'll all be available for purchase, but not right on day one. We're not ready. So
Yeah, it is. I know there'll be a lot of people asking that question.
yeah, and the people who want signed hard copies and signed, I'll do all that. I've tried to find one of the things I say, just as an interesting anecdote, Amazon just takes so much of the money. I mean, I'm going to make a couple of dollars every book, even if I sell it for $18. And so, and some people say, well, I want to buy it in bulk because I want orange pill. Absolutely. So I'm getting a quote on getting it printed in bulk so that we can bring the price down a lot. And so there'll be a way for people to say, oh, I want to buy 20 copies. Great. You don't have to pay $18.50. It'll be something much less than that. And then I'll also have signed books, all that other kind of stuff. And I'm going to go to shows and sign them. So, but the most important thing really is to get it out there. And the thing that everybody who's listening to this could do for me and could help me, one, if you buy it and you like it, review it positively, because that changes the Amazon algorithm. And then two, recommend it to your friends. And then three, if you've got any ideas for media, or if you happen to know anybody who's in the broadcast business or the print media business or anything, I mean, I'll do whatever podcasts I can, whatever appearances I can, whatever interviews I can, because we got one shot at this. And most things in life, I mean, they tend to, the buzz is what sells, right? I mean, if this comes out and there's no buzz, well, we're not going to sell a lot of books, and we're not going to orange pill the world. But if we get a lot of buzz, and everyone's like, oh my God, this book's really good, you got to read it. And I'm not, I can't say that, but I hope you guys will say that. Then we'll, it'll spread, right? And that's what we need. We need people to spread the word. And then related to that, the goal, the secondary goal on this is, I'm very concerned about, average people all over the world who are getting screwed by inflation and don't really know how to protect themselves, and they're living lives of despair because they feel like they can never get ahead. And frankly, in this monetary system, it's pretty damn hard to get ahead unless you understand Bitcoin. And so that's the real, underlying the whole thing. I mean, it's to orange pill a lot of people, but the process of orange pilling them will actually help them to improve their lives and live better lives. And that's really the deep underlying message. I mean, I just, we're gonna go through a period of monetary turmoil here. The book outlines that, and so, you gotta people. I want people to have a chance at coming out of that, winning, not losing. I mean, it's because it'll be a big impact on them and their families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the bit that really stood out for me, and hopefully we can talk about just a snippet from the book to really pull people in, because I've been telling people about this part of the book, and it was you talking about the different generations of Lepard.
Yeah.
So your father, your grandfather, and how the rules changed for them.
Yeah.
In every stage, and then the rules changed for you as well.
Yeah.
And I think that really was like such a brilliant way to open this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, look, the monetary system has really, the founding fathers of the of the United States had a lot of really great ideas. One of them was actually sound money. I mean, silver and gold are in the Constitution. And, like so many things in the U.S. Constitution, we drifted away from some of those initial fabulous thoughts, and we don't entirely follow the Constitution anymore. And that drifting, it's not just, I mean, we all think we're hurting, and we are, because they printed 40% of the money in 2 years. And, we've all had massive inflation. We go to the grocery store and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe how expensive this shit is. But it's not just us. This started quite some time ago, and it's kind of getting progressively worse, which is also why, it's stunning the way things work. I mean, the Almighty has a sense of destiny, and that, we've now got, thank God for Satoshi, we've now got this tool that allows us to, at the end point of this litany of broken things, to solve it. And I talk about this. When you finish the book, you'll get into the whole section on decentralization and technology. I mean, the internet has saved us. I mean, it really has. It's allowed us to question the mainstream narrative, and decentralization, taking power away from the big governments that managed to slaughter 60 million people in World War II, and a lot of other people since then. And I mean, the U.S. spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, what for? On false pretenses. And I mean, all of these things are being exposed, and it's the internet that's doing it. And the internet is there because of technology. And guess what? Technology is now, it's addressed information in the form of the internet, and it's now taking on money. And guess it's disrupting the monetary system, which, has made a lot of the wrong people rich. I mean, one of the things that's angered me so much in the United States is the way the wrong people are winning. Just these quintillionaire criminals who stack stack the game in their favor, and we all pay for it. We pay for it in higher food, we pay for it in higher gasoline, we pay for it in higher every part of our lives. I mean, we pay for it in higher housing because they're out buying up houses, all of it, and that's just wrong. And it'd be easy to say, well, that really sucks, and I understand the problem. It sucks. What can I do about it? And until we always had gold, but gold was some broken and flawed because it was centralized. And until we had Bitcoin, there wasn't an obvious thing you can do about it. Well, now we've got a really obvious thing. This is a revolution, and buying and supporting Bitcoin, if we all do it, we're going to change the world, and we're going to do it. I mean, it's going to happen almost, without any one of our individual efforts, because people over time always figure shit out. But the reason I'm so hardcore adamant about pushing it is that I want to see it figured out in my lifetime, and I'm 67, so we got to hurry up. You're good. You're definitely gonna see it. You're gonna be buying shit with Satoshis in 20 years. But I want to accelerate that so that I'm buying shit with Satoshis while I'm still here. So,
what's it like? Because obviously you were big into you'd identified the problem.
Yeah.
And then you were big into gold before Bitcoin came along.
Right, it was the only choice. Yeah,
exactly. What is the feeling with the gold bugs at the moment? Do you feel like they're warming up to Bitcoin, or?
Oh yeah. So it's really sad. I mean, as you understand, most gold people do have it right about the monetary system, and even a guy like Peter Schiff gets the economic side of it correct. Okay, he's an Austrian. He there's nothing I would disagree with his view of the economics. The sad thing is that some people are just stuck in the past and they can't accept that we're going into a digital world and that this is a real innovation and all that kind of stuff. And I would say, to answer your question, Jordan, it feels to me like the gold community is half and half. There are people like me who totally get it, have embraced it. I mean, I'm now much more much more Bitcoin than gold. Partly that's just because Bitcoin's gone up so much. I didn't start out there, but when your asset goes up a ton, it becomes a bigger percentage if you don't buy more gold. And so, we're seeing the gold guys, a lot of them are moving over, and a lot of people who are both, just like me, there's some sensibility to that. I mean, for older people, much older people, gold makes sense because it's sound money. It doesn't have the volatility of Bitcoin. I mean, if you're 80 years old and put all your money in Bitcoin goes down 60%, you're going to feel like jumping out the window. Gold's never gone down 60%. Gold, the biggest drawdown of gold, was right after 1980. It was like 30% or something. Most years gold's up or down, just small numbers. So you don't have that volatility issue. And it does grow in value compared to fiat because it's not getting printed the way fiat's getting printed. So, I've actually kind of viewed my role in this whole movement as being the guy who I was a legitimate gold guy. I still believe in gold. I call it analog sound money. There's nothing wrong with holding it, but Bitcoin's better. And so I've been the guy who's tried to orange pill the gold bugs and say, hey guys, I'm telling you, you got it right, but you need to have some of this too. And here's why, because it's just, as I've said, it's got two adoption curves going on. One, monetary debasement, we're all locked into that. We know that that's going to occur. It has to occur mathematically. But, you've got an adoption curve going on with Bitcoin. I mean, everyone knows what gold is. It's been around 5,000 years. If you want gold, you already knew it was there and you bought it. Not everyone knows what Bitcoin is. And as more and more people learn and understand what Bitcoin is, they're going to buy it with a fixed supply. It's going to just continue to appreciate in price, and it's going up forever, Laura, as the sailor says. So and so and also it's different than gold in one other important respect, and that is that the supply is capped. I mean, the amount of gold on the planet will double in the next 60 years. I mean, we grow the gold supply at about 1.7% a year. We grow the Bitcoin supply at about 0.8% a year, and as you know, every 4 years that gets cut in half. So in another 3.5 years, it'll be 0.4 and then 0.2, and in 2140 there won't be any more Bitcoin mined. The network will run on fees. So so it's But I get frustrated when Bitcoiners shit on gold bugs and gold bugs shit on Bitcoiners, because the real enemy here is fiat and the government. The governments have killed a lot of people, fought a lot of useless wars, extracted a lot of taxes, just done a bunch of stuff that, in my opinion, they shouldn't be doing. And they're able to do that because they can print the money, and that allows them to spend more than they collect in taxes. Because otherwise, if they tried to tax us, there'd be a revolt. And so they know they can't do that. But since they can print the money, they can get away with the shit. So we need to stop that government ability to print the money. And the way to do that is to make people or to encourage people to use, sound forms of money, gold and Bitcoin.
How did you, because whenever I think of you, I think of two phrases. So sound money advocate and fix the money, fix the world.
Yeah.
Like you drilled that into me.
Well, yeah, I've been a long time. I want to just give full credit here. I don't think I originated that phrase. It actually came from Save the Cheerleaders, Save the World. And I think the first person to use it might have been Marty Bett from TFTC. So I give him credit for that. But yeah, I really do believe that the money, the broken money, as Lynn's book is titled, is the broken money really is the cause of so many of our problems. And that if we could get back to a sound monetary unit, a lot of stupidity and bad stuff would go away. And if we identify, as you recall in the book, my favorite chart in the book is pretty early on in the book. And you remember the chart that shows from 1800 to present, kind of the inflation rate. Yeah. And what you see is from
before.
Yeah, right. What you see is that you see the inflection point in 71 when we went off the gold standard. I mean, it's just stunning, right? Yes, it just goes vertical. Yeah, almost. And so we had inflation. Look, we had inflations before. I mean, 1812 war was inflationary. Civil War was inflationary. World War I, II. Every war is inflationary by definition, because you can't tax people enough to pay for it. You have to inflate the money supply. But they always, the war would end, the inflation would be over, we'd revert to the mean, and, things would be okay again. You'd have stable money. When we went off the gold standard in 71, that was a big, big, big deal. And that was really the beginning of the end. And, they've said, some people have done studies, how long do fiat currencies last? And they tend to last and historically, they tend to last about 40 years. And this one's going on about 53 or something, 53 years since we went off off the gold standard. So it's past its due date. And, I think the dollar is going to be replaced by Bitcoin.
How did you get to be, my ultimate question is, I want to dig a little bit deeper into like the personal side of it, of like, how did you actually get to become the sound money guy, of like realizing that there was an actual problem?
I guess it might have been my grandfather, who was a sound money guy and a gold holder, and was very aware of what Roosevelt did in 1933. I mean, he was a young man at the time, but, he confiscated all the gold. Was aware of what a crime 1971 was. And, then I read a lot of libertarian things, and I started reading the Austrians. Libertarian thought often takes you to the Austrians. And it seemed like a model that just made more sense to me. It explained how things really worked versus the Keynesian model that, in the book. And when you get later into the book, you'll see it. I got a whole part that shows why Keynesianism has succeeded and how, the Keynesians have really kind of married themselves to the government. And it's a win-win for both of them. I mean, the government gets its stuff funded, and the Keynesians get to be powerful economic entities. But the problem is that the people, average people, get screwed. And so, but it was always in the background. I was always a collector of gold and silver coins. I always kind of knew that sound money was the right thing to have, but we hadn't really had it since 71. And I was kind of watching the inflation, but I wasn't all sound. I mean, now I'm kind of all sound money all the time. That's all I do. I mean, as the book will tell you, and I tell a lot of anecdotes and stories from it. I was actually in the venture capital and the technology business, investing in technology companies from 1983 till mid 2000s. My father was fortunate and was very tuned into what was going on in technology, and like the scene in The Graduate, plastics. I mean, he said, or if I were you, I'd figure out a way to get involved in these microprocessors. This shit's going to be big. And I listened to him. And so I invested in technology, and it worked. I mean, and I watched it change the world. And look, maybe that's why I've been able to kind of make the leap from gold to Bitcoin, because I had a technical background and I invested in the internet when the internet came out, and I could see, to me, investing is very much pattern recognition to me. You see kind of the same things happen over and over again. Not the same, but they rhyme, right? And so what happened is the Bitcoin came out. I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And of course, I fucked up, and I blew it, because there were a bunch of other people who tried to do it in the 80s and 90s. There was, I don't know, eGold and DigiCash and B-Money and and they all failed because they didn't, they hadn't figured it out. They didn't have, they hadn't solved, the Byzantine generals' problem. But and so when Bitcoin first came out, I thought, oh yeah, sure, right, that's going to fail too, because all these others did. A mental heuristic, right? And that's why when Max was talking about it 1 or 2, I was listening to him. I liked Max. He was a silver and gold guy before he was a Bitcoiner. But I was like, shit, Max, no, it's going to fail. But then when it got to $100, I was like, well, hang on a second, maybe it's not going to fail. Maybe I got to pay attention here. And so I started paying attention. But I think that technology investing background allowed me to look at it once I started to understand it, and I thought it was kind of like, gee, this is just like the internet. And when the internet, I was very lucky. I was a venture capital investor, and I started investing in the internet in 1993. And the Netscape browser didn't come out to 95, and the original hookup, everything was a dial-up internet provider. You had to put a phone in a modem, and and all, it was slow. And I mean, there was like, what the hell did nobody gives a shit about this. I mean, Krugman said it's not useful. Right. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know. I think it's a pretty powerful idea. I mean, if we could all, send email instantly all around the world and talk to each other. And of course, I couldn't foresee that we were going to be talking video from London to Florida and all that kind of, all the things that have occurred. But I could foresee that it was going to continually get better. Right. And that's what, so, now using that model, I can look at Bitcoin, and people say, well, it's not used as a medium of exchange. And they're right. I mean, the number of, lightning transfers is growing very rapidly, but, nobody uses Bitcoin to pay their bills. It's just not as clunky, it's too expensive, but that'll change, just as the internet was originally green screen and not terribly useful, but that changed. And the technology will definitely make all of this easier, better, faster, etc. And so, it made it, I mean, I just have a sense of deja vu. I mean, to me, Bitcoin is just, the internet for money. I mean, it's that simple.
It reminds me of, so I read Michael Saylor's The Mobile Wave.
Yes, yes.
And
he got it. Yeah, early. Yeah.
Yeah, but the conviction that he had for that, and the way that he talks in that book, is very similar to the way he talks now about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
you're right. That's interesting, because you brought up patterns as well. It's just recognizing.
It's the exact same pattern. Yeah. I mean, something that people should go listen to us, give him a shout out on this pod. I mean, go Google Michael Saylor Atlas Society speech 2024 and listen to it. It's about an hour and change. I love it because, as you know, he's an engineer out of MIT, an aerospace engineer. And what he does in this speech is he just kind of walks through technological changes through the history of mankind. I mean, he starts back with Prometheus and fire, right? And the wheel. I mean, but he quickly goes through kind of every single change that then led to something else and more development. And, the way the printing press obviously led to everybody reading, and the way, heliocentricity changing led to, it's a master class in how technology causes society to evolve. And when you hear it, if you're like me, I think what you will conclude is that, oh my goodness, this is just the next step. I mean, this is not, it's radical, it's different, it's hard to get your arms around it, but it's just a logical progression that you cannot stop, and it is going to happen. And so, to all the Bitcoin deniers, all the Bitcoin haters, all the people who aren't paying attention, I'm kind of like, time is not on your side. I mean, explain to me what you think is going to make it stop. or change it. A while back there was a decent argument. I would try to convince people to buy Bitcoin, and they would say, "Well, I get it, and I get the ideal, but the government's going to stop this. They're not going to let somebody else have another form of money." Well, then the ETF got approved, and I was like, "Oh, so that argument." I mean, now they may still come back and try and stop it. Don't get me wrong. When it really existentially threatens their power, we may see something different happening, especially if we had a blue administration. But when they endorsed it, when they let the ETF through, I was like, oh boy, they have no idea, because there's no going back now. All of that capital that's in the stock market can now buy Bitcoin. Oh boy. So here we are.
It's crazy how,
Yeah,
because that's only been 1 year.
yeah. It wasn't January, February of last year that they approved it. I don't know the exact date.
I want to say the 4th of January.
Anyway, we can Google it and find it. But the point is, and by the way, it was also the fastest growing ETF ever. I mean, by orders of magnitude. I mean, I recall very clearly when the gold ETF was launched in like 03 or 04, gold was in the $280, $300 price. And that ETF, people continually bought. And that gold went from, $300 up to $1,800 on that ETF. But if you look at the dollar flows into gold over that time frame, there's a fraction of what's gone in. I mean, Bitcoin is much bigger dollar flows, much faster. So it really is, in every way beating gold and what gold did.
Hey everyone, I'm interrupting this episode really quickly just to tell you to please subscribe to our newsletter. Yes, newsletters usually suck, but trust me, ours doesn't. We summarize the Bitcoin news from the week every Friday and make it readable in less than 4 minutes. Do you know how hard that is? And it's totally free. So I put a link below to our last one where you can just go and check it out and see if you like it, and then please hit subscribe. Okay, now back to the episode. Whilst we're on gold, Bitcoin, what do you think about so gold essentially, I'm doing this from memory, but it was pretty much like an 8 or 9 year bull run it kind of went on after that ETF launch.
Yeah. And then they got another credit cycle going. I talk about that in the book too, because that was the toughest time of my life. It went from 250 in 2000 to 1900 in 2011. Then it went from 1900 down to 1,000 in 2015. And I got the living shit kicked out of me. And I mean, it was awful. I mean, I tell that whole story in the book. I mean, in a silver lining kind of way, that's what led me to get into shape, physical shape, because as I say in the book, I wanted to be around long enough to beat these bastards. But that happened because they changed a bunch of rules again. They took away the reserve requirements for banks. They started paying interest on excess reserves in 2008. And they started another credit cycle, which is what we're now in, which is what I call the everything bubble. And they held the money the distortions of capitalism that came out of 2008 are so large and so stunning that, I've more or less got a couple of chapters in the book just devoted to laying it out, because it's just unbelievable. I mean, they took interest rates at 0%, from 2008 to 2015, and they did it again from 2019 through 2022 with COVID, and they 0% interest rate. That's like a tautology. I mean, if capital is supposed to earn a return. If the interest rate is 0, that means capital is not earning a return, which then says, okay, well, the capital is worthless. I mean, it's like, huh? I mean, how is that possible? It's just, it's such an amazing distortion. And then on top of that, they turned the printers on with QE, which they say it's not printing money, but it is. And, they lie about it. And they injected a ton of money into the system. And, this is the problem with inflation and exponential growth. There's a great Jens Parson quote in the book that says the problem with inflation is like drinking. You get a hangover and then you start drinking again to cure that hangover. You got to drink even more. And so that's kind of how it is with inflation. I mean, with every round of this, it's getting bigger, more intense, more abusive. More people are getting hurt. And now it's so glaring and obvious and outrageous, and the world is so broken. I mean, one of my other favorite charts in the book is right in the beginning, where it's the chart that shows the percentage of wealth controlled by the top 1%. It's others have put it on Twitter, and it's from Fred, and it's like the top 1% of the United States is 92% of the wealth is controlled by the top 1%. And that's only because the top 1%, they like inflation. They actually know how to play this game. This game makes them richer because they know how to rig it. You know, they can borrow cheap, they can buy a producing asset, et cetera, et cetera. And it makes the rest of us poor. Because the guy who's working for a wage, he can't borrow cheap. He's got to go to the credit card company and pay 25%. You know, and his wages aren't going up as fast as the inflation, so he's continually losing ground. I mean, and this is why we've had, you know, all the bad health outcomes. There's a chapter in the book on this. I mean, well, deaths of despair, right? And I mean, it's just, you know, it's just, Jordan, it just makes me sick. I mean, and again, all of these things are the reasons that drove me to write the book. I mean, I said this in some other podcasts. I really do believe it. I mean, and I think, and that's why I kind of came to the conclusion. I mean, originally when I started writing, I was like, well, gee, Larry, do you really have anything new or interesting or different to say? You know, because there've been a lot of great books written, and there's no point in saying the same thing over again. And then I thought, well, you know, yeah, maybe I do, because at 67, I remember what America was like in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was a lot better. I mean, it was just a lot better. It was fairer. It was kinder. It wasn't a big money grab. The inflation wasn't running away. I mean, it was just better. And you know, now, you know, I look at my kids in their 20s. They can't buy a house. They, you know, they do fine, but they, you know, they don't have much excess cash at the end of the month. I mean, you know, when I was young, I could save money. I could live on less than I was earning. And all these things have changed. And so I thought maybe it'd be helpful to have somebody who's older, who's seen it change, and tell people, you know, it doesn't have to be this way. You know, there's a, you know what I mean? This things, you know, you guys, you're young, you don't know, you never saw that. You don't know what it's all about. And I'm telling you, it does not have to be this way. It could be much better, you know?
That's such a good point, because from my perspective as well, so I'm 28.
Right.
I've just turned 28, and I didn't really see much of like what it was like in the UK anyway.
Right.
In 70s, 80s, 90s. And like I don't know what it was like. I've done a lot of research into it, like
Sure.
books, looking at charts,
Right.
all of this, but I don't know how it felt.
It was better. I'm telling you, it was so much better. Because I've lived through all of it. And it just, you know, this is the worst I've ever seen it. It's really, and that's sad. I mean, it makes me sad. And again, that, you know, you kind of think, well, why do you write a book? Well, God damn it, somebody had to say it. You know what I mean? And that's the purpose behind the book.
Yeah, because a lot of people in my position, so I'm in between millennial and Generation Z.
Right.
And so I'm right on the border of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people my age don't know about this. They haven't researched Bitcoin in such depth. They don't know the problem. Right. So they think that now is normal.
Yeah,
and
sure. Why wouldn't you?
That's a big problem.
That's all you've ever known. Yeah, why wouldn't you? Well, and by the way, they're also being gaslit by all the authorities. I mean, you know, I know a lot of young people who believe in socialism and the government should take care of them and all this stuff. And the reason we have inflation is because of greedy corporations. Do you know what I mean? And look, there's some corporations that misbehave. I won't dispute that. But inflation is not caused by greedy corporations. Inflation's got one very clear source. It's the Federal Reserve monetary policy, period. You know, and so, you know, until we solve that, we're going to have inflation. And that's, you know, and by the way, the book addresses that too. I mean, some people say, well, yeah, okay, fine. You're bitching a lot. You know, let's have some optimism. Tell me how it gets better. And, you know, there's optimism in the book, and there's even a policy prescription in the book. I mean, I wrote the speech I think some president should give. And, you know, you can read it. And it's, I don't know if did you skip around and read that?
I didn't read that.
Go back to, I think it's like chapter 20 something. It's called policy response. And I actually wrote a speech. I said, this is the speech the president should give. And what it basically, I mean, I don't want to spoil it all, but it more or less says, look, we gotta make Bitcoin, gold, and silver all forms of legal tender with no taxation on capital, on the gain versus the dollar. We've got to eliminate the Federal Reserve, and then we've got to eliminate the FDIC and make the banks stand on their own. We can't be bailing out the banks. Every time we bail out the banks, we get inflation. I mean, you know, great. We say, you know, and I even have a policy response for that. I mean, you know, what Wall Street says, and as you know from the opening scene, I challenge them on this. But what Wall Street says is
bet.
don't tell everybody.
I wouldn't say anything.
But the opening scene is blockbuster, right? Yeah, and it's like, look, if we hadn't bailed out these banks, the world as we know it would have come to an end, and that's just bullshit. It's total, absolute bullshit. And I provide an alternative scenario to that. So, I mean, look, I'm just one guy, and I'm up against some big, powerful forces, and I'm throwing spears at the castle. And I don't know. The castle's got pretty strong walls, so I don't know if any of the spears are going to get through. But as I said, one of my sound money friends said to me, and I got this anecdote in the book too. I mean, we were both gold guys, and I think in 2018 he made the switch. He had about 100% of his assets in gold, was retired, and he said, "You know what, Larry? I'm going to Bitcoin. I mean, these guys have got better spears, better weapons. They're trying to. They've got all these young kids. They're quoting von Mises. They read the Bitcoin Standard. I mean, we're going to storm Bitcoin's going to storm the castle. I mean, and I've often said, I say this at conferences. It was tiring for me. It was hard for me. I've been fighting this war forever. I mean, I felt like Don Quixote, tilting at the fiat money windmill. I mean, just am I a fool, right? But then, then along comes your generation and Safe's book and a lot of other great events. And it's kind of like, no, hey, you know what? I mean, we're still the underdog, but goddamn, we're winning. And, in fact, I really like our chances. Right. So that's, that's been really fun to, to see guys like Jack Mallers, for example. I mean, just this young people, totally committed, full of passion, understanding the issue, and fighting to make the system better. It's like, wow, that's great. It's really great. And like the work you're doing. I mean, I love these podcasts. I mean, a lot of young guys are doing great podcasts, and, all of it makes a difference. Every mind we can change to understand the problem, then that's another mind that'll help us implement a good solution.
So it's so true. And I've referenced this a bit, but I gave a talk in Bulgaria.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
At Plamin's conference.
Yeah, I love Plamin. His career.
I gave a talk there last year, and it was crazy as a numbers game. Yeah. And it's all about how, to your point there, of like more people coming into Bitcoin. Yeah. Like people in Bitcoin were seen as being crazy and very outcast against the status quo for so long, because we didn't have the numbers behind us, the backing of other people. But now it's starting to feel less crazy because more people understand it.
Absolutely. I mean, one, you've got, crusaders like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who saw the truckers thing and said, hey, you know what? This is a freedom tool. I really like it. Now he's all the way in. And then two, you've even got kind of guys I don't necessarily like or respect, the corrupt guys like a Larry Fink, who ran BlackRock and used to shit all over it. But, I give him credit. He's not a stupid man. And so he went and he did the analysis, and he realized, and I'm sure the conclusion he came to is, oh shit, like we've all come to, this is inevitable. And I either got to decide, am I going to get on board this and support it and try and figure out a way to make money off it, which is what he's doing, of course, with his ETF, or am I going to be like the Vanguard guy and say, no, this is bullshit, I'm not interested, and lose my job? Because as we know, that CEO of Vanguard, kind of shat all over it. And the next thing you knew, he was out because he missed the whole opportunity. I mean, the fees that BlackRock is earning off the IBIT, ETF, I'll bet they're pretty substantial. I mean, it's a big ETF now. They get 30 basis points. So, but my point is that it is that game theory. I mean, look, you can either decide you're going to figure it out and get on board or not. And, Preston and I talked about this recently. I mean, a lot of people think, my most recent thing I've encountered, I deal with a lot of tradfin normies, because those are what my friends used to be, right? Some of them aren't anymore because they hate me for Bitcoin. But and the most common thing I hear is, hey, yeah, okay, great, it's working great, but it's $100,000. One, it's going to correct, and they might be right. But two, you bought it so much cheaper, and they just can't bear the thought of paying a lot more than I paid for it. And I said, no, you got to flip this on the other side. If there's a fire in a theater and it's filling up with smoke, do you care what you pay to get out the exit? Because that's the actual mental model you should be looking at here. If this thing's going, because I think it's going to $1 million, then it's going to 10 million, then the dollar's worthless, and we buy things in sats. So do you want to have zero of that thing that we're going to use to buy stuff in the future? I don't. I want to own it. And so I, and I say, look, I mean, Max, I've had some great meetings with Max. I love the guy. Hey, Max said, shit, I was pissed off I had to pay $1 or $2 when Trace was buying it for 50 cents, Trace Meyer. Right. And so everybody thinks you're overpaying. Whenever you go into Bitcoin, you always feel like you're overpaying. But guess what? The power of compounding means that in 5 or 10 years, you'll be really glad you did it. And if you don't, then in 5 or 10 years, you'll be thinking, Christ, now I got to pay $1 million a coin. I could have bought it for 100. Right. I mean, that's kind of how it's going to happen in my view.
Yeah, this is exactly the same. So a lot of my friends,
Right.
they're not as in depth in Bitcoin as me. They understand it a little bit, but I just remember maybe 4 years ago, one of my friends was like, "I'll wait till it gets down to this price." He says all the time, "Although when it gets down to this price, I will buy it.
I'll definitely buy it."
And it doesn't go down to that price. And it's always that ladder of where it gets down here, I'll buy it again.
Well, which by the way, just full warning, it's not to say we won't have some pullbacks in the future. I mean, I don't think the pullbacks have been outlawed, but I do, one thing that has been true historically, with maybe I think one exception, is it's always been higher highs and higher lows on these pullbacks. And so my sense is that, I mean, my model is kind of we're at 100 is 105 now or something. And my model is this run takes us, if you kind of look at the past cycles, this run takes us to 200, 250, maybe 300. And by the way, maybe then it gets a little over its skis. Everyone's a little overextended. Everyone's, too much hype, and it comes back to 150. You know what I mean? I mean, and that would strike me as entirely possible and entirely doable, and not out of the ordinary. And then from the 150, it goes to 700. I mean, that's kind of the pattern that it's followed, and that's all we really have to go on. But we've now been through a bunch of halvings and a bunch of cycles and a bunch of pullbacks. So, I expect those to continue. There has been a trend where each pullback is less severe than the prior one. I mean, I think the first pullback was like 90%. I mean, I recall I had lunch with Max in the Middle East, and he said, yeah, when I first started pushing it, it went up to 20, and then it corrected to 1. And I had people calling me up and saying, dude, you've wrecked my retirement. You've killed me. I mean, he said people were, he said it was the hardest time ever in Bitcoin because people were just really, really pissed off at him. And he said, I don't care. Buy it at 1, don't sell. And, some listened to him, some didn't. I mean, those who listened to him obviously are very well set right now. So yeah, it is what it is,
Yeah. Do you think I know it's very short term thinking, but do you think that cycles, because we're going on history of been going through cycles, do you think we just continue on that?
I kind of do. I mean, it's just not having anything better. I mean, I kind of, I will say in terms of price predictions, I kind of use the power law model that Stenosazi and Kruger have worked up as kind of, to me, that's kind of a base layer of, compound annual growth in the 30, 40% a year for a bunch of years with swings around that. I also, though, am aware that, as Saylor says, we're kind of in that Bitcoin golden age where, it feels to me like we're kind of at the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point where we're, it's now people are talking about it. You got an ETF. I mean, I'll say in my personal circles, everyone now knows I'm a Bitcoin guy, and everyone's asking me a lot of questions. And that didn't happen a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I mean, almost everyone I know is trying to figure out, what do I do with this thing? What is this thing? What do I do with it? That's different. And so I think we could very easily enter a cycle here where, and I'm very smart people who say, no, Larry, you're wrong. It's not just going to 250 and correct. We're going to 500, 700, a million in the next 2 years. I mean, nation state adoption and FOMO, I mean, just all the kind of stuff. And they could be right. I mean, I just don't know. I don't want to predict that with certainty. And I'm not selling anything close to any of these prices. So I don't, I think it's going to be worth millions of coin. And, then maybe when I retire, I'll slowly sell some off to, pay my daily bills. But, my sense is that, we're entering the steep part of the adoption curve. And I would not, just as you point out, your friend's waiting for pullback. I wouldn't count on pullbacks emerging. I've had several people come to me and say, well, should I plop buy or should I dollar cost average? I'm like, I think you should plop buy but maybe if you want to, if that would make you feel uncomfortable, if we, what I say to people is I still think 50% pullbacks are possible. So whatever you buy, I think you have to be mentally in your mind, recognize it could lose half its value, and know that you wouldn't panic, know that you wouldn't sell. And in fact, if that did happen, you'd be thinking to yourself, what else can I sell to take advantage of this bargain? Right. So, maybe a new person coming to it, maybe you put, 70% of your money in, you keep the other 30 in case you get a pullback. But like there's some chance that that other 30 never gets deployed at a price lower than today, because it could just run hard here for a few more years.
Yeah. And I guess the moral of the story is nobody knows.
Nobody really knows. I don't know. Nobody really knows it. But there again, it is pattern recognition. I mean, we see all of the metrics, the ETFs, the nation states. I mean, we just see more and more wallets, hash power, addresses, all of it. So
I think that's the biggest takeaway for this. So because you referenced in your book, you referenced The Fourth Turning.
Yeah.
And that is the book that got me into Bitcoin. Which is actually really interesting.
Good for you.
Really, really interesting now, because it was me recognizing a pattern.
Yes.
Because I was very zoomed in before that.
Yeah.
And I hadn't quite zoomed out and looked at cycles that we've gone through and patterns that we've gone through. It comes back to the point I was making of I've not experienced what it was like.
Right.
So then that book really taught me what it was like and to recognize these patterns. So I was very happy that you referenced that in your book.
Yeah, that book has played a big part of my thinking. I mean, we can see this monetary system is coming unglued. I mean, and people have told me, I said, well, you're awfully extreme for saying that. You're outside of the mainstream, and I am. But it's just math. It's not. I have such a high level of conviction on it because I know how the math works. You grow the debt faster than you grow the GDP. Something's got to give. And it's the monetary system. Either you're going to have a collapse or you're going to have to print like crazy, and you're going to have very, very high inflation. So pick one. And we've seen, and this is why the book's named The Big Print, we've seen that, the Fed historically has always chosen to print versus allow a collapse. I mean, this has happened repeatedly and over again. So
yeah. It looks like you're moving in the right direction in the US, whereas over the pond here, maybe not so much. I don't know if you see it. Did you see Lagarde's comment?
Yeah, I saw that. She is just an idiot, all in due time. Yeah, in due time, lady, you're going to be out of your position. I mean, you're going to, it's just, look, there are so many people who don't get it and so many skeptics, and they're going to be dragged kicking and screaming into it, if at all. And, pain is a great teacher. I think so many average people get it because they're feeling pain and they're looking for a solution. And then it's just logical that this is a good solution. And so they go to it. I think one of the problems my normie TradFi friends have is that many of them have made a lot of money, done extremely well. They're really not feeling any pain. Grocery prices are higher, but they make so much money, they don't care. And, whereas those of us who are, more modest of means, we've been feeling the pain, and, it's like, and we see it. And so we see it for what it is, and we want to fix it. We think it's wrong. So
that's, a great way to end the pod, I think.
Okay.
Thank
you very much. And I really appreciate it. I would just ask everyone who's listening, if you do buy the book, please read it. I hope you like it. If you do like it, please review it positively. Amazon has all kinds of algorithms that will determine where it gets placed and how fast it spreads. And if we really want to orange pill the world, we got to get as many people as possible to be aware of the fundamental problem. And that's the book's structured in two sections. Part one is the problem, lengthy part, and some of it's heavy lifting. You may not want to read all the chapters, but part two is the solution, which is really the case for deflation, Austrian economics, Bitcoin, and sound money. And as I said,
I'm only 60 pages in, but this isn't just another, it doesn't feel like just another Bitcoin book because you're telling it through your.
Yeah, I got all kind. It gets better. Where do you get some of the anecdotes in there? I got some good shit.
So I'm excited.
There's stuff my wife didn't want me to put in there, but whatever.
Did you ask for permission?
Yeah, well, yeah, there were a couple that got edited out, but the other thing I've told everybody is I told everybody, you know, I said at the back of the book, there's going to be a section of memes. I had this fabulous collection of memes, you know, Bitcoin memes. I was going, well, as it turns out, the book is now like in the 300 plus pages. And it turns out, apparently, it gets very hard to sell a book when it's over 400 pages. People just see it as being too intimidating. So sadly, I had to yank that section. So if you're buying it because I told you there'd be memes in the back, I apologize. I can't. They're not there. Now, what I'm going to do is there's a website that I haven't built yet, but I will build called the bigprintbook.com. And I will, you know, bulk ordering, signed copies, all the other extra stuff will be there. And then there'll be kind of updates. You know, I'll do some commentary there on a regular basis and maybe a mailing list and so forth. And then, and there'll also be the meme chapter with all the great Bitcoin memes. So you get, you don't get it with a book, but you'll be able to get it for free on the website. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it to be out there.
Me too. I tell you, it's been a long road. I'm at that stage where, God, I just got to finish it. And that's literally days away. We're speaking on Friday, the 31st of January. It literally should be out in the next few days.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'll be happy to see, and I hope it does well. To me, that's the measure. You know, do normies care? That's what we're trying to generate. Because if we want this movement, I mean, the world will be. I sincerely believe the world will be a much better place when we are on a Bitcoin standard, and so obviously, as an advocate for that, you know, that's why I wrote the book.
And I'm sure it will be. We'll millions of copies out.
I hope. Oh God, that's music to my ears. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can hope for that. But even if we just got hundreds of thousands, that might be a decent start.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. And
thanks, Jordan. Always nice to see you. And
always so good.
Yeah. Happy to do it anytime. And anything I can do to help you in your efforts. I know you're doing a great job with your pods. So thanks.